that. Thanks everybody for joining today. As you can see here, our topic today is why MSPs should add an advanced web security offering. First couple slides here are going to be talking about some statistics, so I'll dive right into that. The first fact here is from Varonis.com. 62% of businesses have experienced phishing and social engineering attacks. So very prevalent out there in the market today. Second fact here from Norton, 1 in 13 web requests will actually lead to malware. Some other things that we found, a DNS attack, is really an exploit in which an attacker takes an advantage of vulnerabilities in the domain naming system, the DNS. So on an IDC 2019 Global DNS Threat Report, we see an increased number of DNS attacks, as well as the damage they caused in the past year. Here are a few relevant statistics presented. More than 80% of organizations surveyed say that they suffered from a DNS attack. The costs incurred due to these breaches rose by 49%, with an average cost per attack above $1 million. The targeted sector was financial services, the media, the telecommunication sectors, and meanwhile were most affected and by their brand damage. And government agencies, on the other hand, suffered most from the theft of sensitive data. So everyone's really at risk here. And what does this mean to your customers? Well, cybercriminals are increasingly focused on their attacks against DNS. And why is that? Because it's a ubiquitous, open, and often unprotected environment, and absolutely vital to the internet's existence. Since, not surprisingly, cybercriminals have evolved their targeted threats to leverage this security vulnerability, and targeted threats, to take advantage of this vector are really starting to grow in number. So the average cost of DNS attacks in the US has climbed over 57%. In really over the last year to over $654,000 from a survey that we found from Efficient IP. The frequency of DNS attacks and the costs associated with addressing them are both increasing sharply. DNS management vendor Efficient IP recently had research firm Coleman Parks poll about 1,000 IT managers in North America, Asia, Europe, and on the causes in response to the DNS-based threats to kind of find out what their response were. The results showed that the global average cost of DNS has surged 57% over 2017 to $715,000 in 2018. And in the past 12 months, organizations faced an average of 7 DNS attacks. Some of the victims ended up paying more than $5 million in associated costs, and 1 in 5, 22% really, of organizations suffered business losses to DNS attacks. In addition to security threats, companies can face liability issues with employees accessing certain material on the web. For example, a company can be held liable if the employee can access a site that allows them to download illegal software. Over a third of employees' internet activity at work is non-work related. So how can you be sure that your employees aren't, going to inappropriate sites or, dangerous websites? Today's organizations require a centrally managed content filtering solution that's easy to set up and scale. With Barracuda Content Shield, we deliver a powerful web threat protection and content filtering solution for MSPs. It's powered by Barracuda's extensive threat intelligence network. Barracuda Content Shield protects users from malicious sites and inappropriate content, keeping your customers, your business safer, and their employees more productive. With more than 90 URL categories, Content Shield does more than protect your customers from malicious website. It also ensures that your employees are protected from accessing sites that would violate company policy, norms, standards for your company. We have agentless DNS protection for all devices that sit behind your customer's router or firewall, which is critical for IoT devices as they become more common in today's workplace. The robust DNS filtering provides protection from online threats such as viruses, malware, ransomware, phishing attacks, and botnets by blocking the endpoint communication to websites that host the malicious content. By enforcing policy at the DNS level, you actually block the sites before that connection is made, preventing dangerous communication between endpoint and website. We have real-time alerts about malicious detections, as well as white-labeled reports on threats blocked and destinations blocked. Just a few of the things that the productivity reports highlighted, as well as the most common domain categories visited. Um, so how does Content Shield work? Well, there's two levels of Content Shield, Basic Content Shield and Content Shield Plus. Basic Content Shield uses the edge device, as I kind of described, like a router or firewall, to filter all DNS requests as they leave a network. Content Shield Plus, as I'll also talk about, you'll see, uses an agent installed on the laptop or device to be able to filter the DNS requests and even allow for group policies for those queries. So at this point, I'm going to jump into a live demo of Content Shield. Give me one moment here. So here I am on the dashboard view of a customer's Barracuda Content Shield. This particular version is Barracuda Content Shield Plus, which includes both the basic DNS filtering, which is represented by this DNS filtering tab, as well as the Plus version, the advanced filtering, the agent-based filtering, which is configurable by this tab here. So with the DNS filtering, the basic filtering that you get, as I described, you think about your edge device, whether that's a firewall or a router of some sort. And what we're trying to do is change its DNS server to be Barracuda's, so that when these lookups are happening, we're able to filter and stop them from going to specific websites. So from a configuration standpoint, it's very simple to just add a location, give it an optional name to that location, and we're essentially just identifying if the outbound IP address is static or if it's dynamic. Simply, if it's static, we're just going to tell our system what that IP address is. If it's dynamic, we're going to be able to install a small program on a computer on the network, which will not leave. That computer being on the network and not leaving will allow us to kind of update our systems on what the current IP address is. Going through that, we're able to also set up the categories from this step as well. And later on, we can certainly modify these categories, but we start to give you, different levels of protection here, whether you want, a high level of protection, if you just want the typical medium, low level, but you can also come in here and decide, which of these you'd like to toggle. And of course, on the next pages, we start to get more specific. The exceptions are for allowed domains or blocked domains that are on top of what you've seen. From here, we'll start to see all the locations that have been added. So as you start to add more locations in the manner I just showed you, they'd be listed here, the outbound IP address, and making sure that we have a secured connection. And as I mentioned, we can see the categories and modify them, at any time if we'd like to change the behavior of what these individuals are able to see. We have exceptions here that you can modify as well. So this would be the basic DNS filtering, really great for libraries or static, a network that a number of individuals or devices are connecting to, where we can control and it's not really moving. But you start to think about, okay, now what if I have laptops that are leaving? They're gonna, get out of that network. I still want them to be protected. And that's where we actually have the advanced or the Barracuda Content Shield Plus filtering. So turning the page to that, really this is going to be where we're setting up the rules for the advanced filtering. So to take a quick step back, we're able to download an agent on each of the laptops that we want protected. And that agent will then point back to this Barracuda Content Shield, referencing the policies and the filtering and the rules that you've basically set up in here. But very easily, I can reorder these. I can change the rules that are in here. I can add new rules. These are based on users, as we can actually sync with Active Directories or Azure Active Directory if you're on Office 365 to actually add rules based on specific individuals. So where normally the configuration would be for everybody using the agent, syncing with an Active Directory actually allows you to specify who is going to be able to see the websites, or maybe give marketing access to social media where everybody else wouldn't be able to see that. But very much like we had the basic DNS filtering, we try to make this as easy as possible. Different types of rules can be added. Categories is the familiar one that we've seen from the previous interface. I can decide what types of things I don't want my my end users to see. Domains and URLs are more specific, so these are sort of like the exceptions you saw in the basic filtering, where I can decide exactly, specific websites that I want to behave differently. From here, you can see the different rules that are listed, the different individuals and their rules and what order they take priority. It's from top down, so where things are higher up, they are taking more priority. Following the tabs off to the right-hand side here, we are mostly just getting information on what we're seeing. Web filtering logs on where people are going, where we're seeing, are they blocked or are they being allowed? Who is the individual? What, you know, category or rule was being applied to that? Of course, we can do searches to look at specific items if we want to find out who's looking at social media or you know, specific gambling websites maybe. These are downloadable if you want to use the comma separated values format. We can change some of the columns. You know, there's a little bit of customization on what we're looking at. So these reports are, you know, to your benefit. Moving off to the left-hand side here, this threat policy tab, the next one down, is actually talking about some filtering that we have on the agent-based filtering. So with the advanced filtering, that agent, you're installing something on the individual's computer. We're actually able to use some malware protection for the downloads and also the removable drives that are connected to the system. So we do offer a set of, you know, protections and filters that'll help you with these types of things. So you can configure their policies and their, you know, passwords here. We also have exclusions for different types of files. Quarantine is kind of related to the threat policy. So for things that we're finding that are, you know, potentially malware, they'll be listed here. We can kind of identify and review those items to see if they're of interest to us or what we want to do with them. Not much here in my demo, I apologize. And then threat logs are a similar log where we're looking at those advanced users using the Advanced Content Shield Plus agent and trying to see if there's anything happening on their accounts that should be noted. Reports, just more information for you. This one is a little bit more customizable where we can actually see different types of reports. There's a couple of them in here that we can get pretty customizable with. You guys would get access to a demo environment if you were interested in, but we could basically, you know, have you fiddle around through this and see the different types of things that we're able to produce from these reports. Super categories is a big one I like. Demo doesn't really behave too much with me, I apologize. Moving right along through the tabs over here, endpoints, very simply going to be the devices that the agents are installed on. So this is just going to list the, you know, people that are communicating back to Barracuda Content Shield here for this particular account, letting you know, what types of threats they're seeing, what agent version they're on, and when the last threat was. So we can basically just make sure that the individuals who should be being protected are listed here and communicate with them as well. Alerts here are going to be alerts of different categories. You can actually add alerts if you'd like to see different things coming through, if you're interested in different behaviors that are happening, categories that people are looking at. Maybe every time somebody goes to, you know, an illegal drug website, you'd want to be made aware of that. We can actually add multiple recipients here to alert individuals to come into the system to be able to see what's going on. Moving right along, the downloads tab here, very simply, is going to be how we actually get the agent. This particular download has two different versions, the Windows and the Mac agent, so depending on what operating system that you're running. But both of them are going to also look for this configuration file. It's a key file that is part of the download, a part of the installation, I should say, that these agents are generic, so when you're installing them, they're all going to be the same. But when you're actually accessing this key file, this is where it's saying this is the configuration and the policies that we have set up, and this is where it's actually referring back to the particular Barracuda Content Shield that you've set up. So by selecting this key file, it's basically associating it with the correct account. Off to the left here, this users tab is where we're actually talking about those directory service syncs. So where I talked about the LDAP sync with their Active Directory on-premise environment, we could sync with the users in that environment as well as in Azure Active Directory for anybody on Office 365. So with these directory syncs, they're configured through our Barracuda Cloud Control, and we'd be able to walk you through these if needed. And alternatively to that, we could also manually configure the users. I don't want to break this, but we'll basically be able to just add in users specifically and reference them that way, as opposed to syncing with an Active Directory. So they would be managed here in Barracuda Content Shield as opposed to on your mail server. The last two tabs here, we got account settings. This is about custom branding. You can see, adding a photo, a logo here. We're actually able to brand the block pages for the end users. We can decide if agents are allowed to automatically update or what the behavior for that would be, and also where agents are being removed if they're going to be requiring a password. So this is something that I typically recommend when you're setting these up. And the last thing here is the block page. So we do allow you to have, the Barracuda default page with your logo up at the top, but we can, get a little bit more creative here with the custom HTML. So it makes it actually pretty slick to have something customized and branded towards your environment for this. So that does it for me for this demo. I'm going to open it up back to Sarah for, the Q&A section, and we can start taking questions over the Zoom chat.
Great, thanks, Kevin. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the questions or chat panel to the right of the Zoom webinar screen. As Kevin just mentioned, we have about 5 minutes or so available to answer any of your questions, so feel free to submit them. As you guys are submitting your questions, I will be launching a short poll. It's 2 questions. If you can answer it, that would be great.
So I do see a question here in the chat. Would this service be unnecessary if deployed to a site with a Cloud Gen firewall already installed and configured for filtering? It would still be necessary for those devices that are actually off the network. So if you think of a firewall as, kind of like that edge device where it's protecting people who are on that environment, the Content Shield Plus actually allows you to cover for those laptops leaving the environment. Any other questions or anything else you guys want to see again?
All right, Kevin, I think that's all the questions we have for the day.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.